Tim May of the Dispatch joins us right now. Tim, are you as anxious as Stan and I for this to be over?
No, I want this to go on for like weeks.
I know. We can't.
Are you kidding me? This is like, it's been really weird, Matt, because I've been on a bunch of radio shows and stuff, and, obviously written things about it. Bill Rabinowitz has written about it, and we're all, it's like you don't really know what was said in that, I've picked up on a few things. I've talked to some people who've been interviewed by the committee, or not the committee, the investigative team and stuff, and they were really reluctant to share a lot of details because they were, in essence, sworn to secrecy, for want of another word, another phrase there, when as they were leaving the room. But the interesting thing is I haven't heard anybody come out yet and tell me that anything came up that has refuted Urban Meyer's version of things, meaning that he followed protocol, et cetera. Obviously, there's been some stuff come up in regards to, especially to Zach Smith's maybe lifestyle as a coach in the building, so to speak, and especially recently. But, for example, I was told, yesterday by a couple of the people that were interviewed that they were already asking about the female that was involved in that and Zach Smith, before this ever came out at the end of the week last week. So this has been a very I'm very impressed from what I've heard about how this investigative team went about things. Whether it's worth $500,000, I guess the legislature is going to still debate that.
Right.
But the bottom line is, everybody I've talked to said they were extremely thorough and basically left no rocks unturned. I mean, that's the term I'm using. That may not be the correct one, but yeah, I'm interested as you are to see what they finally say. Maybe tomorrow, who knows, could stretch on to Thursday. We understand his executive session is going to start, shortly after 9:30, as soon as they meet, the Board of Trustees. And then, I guess what you're being told is the final decision will be a Michael Drake decision. But you got to figure he's going to take heavily the recommendations that come from his investigative committee and then the Board of Trustees. So we'll see where it goes.
Tim, just your take on the story that came out on Friday with Brett McMurphy with the lurid details of what went on with Zach Smith. I'm just wondering where your line is with the Dispatch, yourself personally, journalistically. Like, man, do I run this story? Do I not run this story? Where is the line that you look at that this is newsworthy, I really need to run it, or you know what, this really doesn't pertain exactly to what's being investigated, I don't need to run it? How do you fall on that, and how do you make such decisions?
Well, I would not have run it as graphically described as he did, for example, and, something that rhymes with clicks.
Yes.
But that does get clicks. Anyway, so that's where I would fall on that, number one. Number two, the thing that is germane, and I got to give it up to him, that's germane, is the possible alleged, whatever you want to call it, situations that possibly took place in the Woody Hayes Athletic Center between I think that's germane to this from the standpoint of maybe the lifestyle was being lived, but also how some things either slip through the cracks or were tolerated, depending on how you look at it. So that I think was, I think that was germane to this, for want of another word. I would say Stanley Jackson, but I think people. You get it?
I get it. I get the joke. Germane, yes.
Yeah. So anyway, but that's the way we're in a new era, man. And I'm glad I'm 64 and a half years old.
Yeah. A lot. You mentioned that from the indication you've gotten, the committee, all that stuff was new to us when we looked at it on Friday. But you believe the committee was well aware of the stuff that was in the Brett McMurphy report. They were well aware of and had already pulled up. Do you believe that?
Well, I know the name of one of the parties involved, and I know that name had come up based on people I've talked to who have been interviewed by the investigators. That name came up quite at one point quite a bit, I guess. So I'm under the impression that they were well aware of that, which to me was that kind of, if there was any bombshell intended, except for the receipts, whatever you call those that they showed graphically with pictures, that was bombshell. But that was more, more like golly, man. There's all kinds of things I could say, but I'm talking on the radio. So
I know, I understand.
I can't say them in the way I want to say them. If you and I were just talking, me, you, and Stan the Man, I could really. But anyway, bottom line is that way I understand it was no surprise, no bombshell at all to the investigators. They had already crossed those bridges. Visiting with
Tim May of the Dispatch, and Tim, I don't know if you have the answer to this or not, but your opinion. Do you think the target for the committee has changed at all? Because what we started this investigation understanding was did Urban Meyer follow proper protocol with regards to domestic violence incidents, and is it still that, or has it become something else because of, the OVI, this latest story, and you have this assistant that you may have let get loose? And has the target changed, I guess I'm asking, Tim, with the Board of Trustees? Is it more about, boy, this coach you let get away with too much, or is it still the nuts and bolts of the domestic violence and how he handled that situation?
I guess the best way to answer that is that other stuff, evidently came up. I mean, during the investigation. So obviously they were interested in the nuts and bolts of that stuff as much as anything else. As I've said all along, and I don't know if you agree or not, I think it would have been pretty simple, like a 1 day, maybe affair, maybe not even a 1 day, 6 month. 6-hour deal to figure out whether Urban Meyer followed proper protocol in 2015. When you realize that Jack Smith said that he was called back from the road recruiting, right after the allegations were made, to answer to them, and that tells you that Ohio State knew about it. Urban Meyer said he did know about it, as you know, on August the 3rd in his long statement, and that Gene Smith, obviously Jack Smith said Gene Smith knew about it. So that part of proper protocol seems like that would have been answered quickly. Clearly, they had to, any investigation, you don't, you trust but verify. So that's what the rest of it was all about. But there was I don't think there was any guideline that you can go here but not here to the investigators. It sounded like anything that had to do with Zach Smith and or Urban Meyer was free reign from the standpoint of their possibly their relationship, et cetera, and how things went down over the last 6 years while he was an Ohio State employee. So that's what I get, but I don't know how much that's going to weigh into it. When a couple of insiders, whatever you want to call it, people opined to a couple of our legislature coverage guys yesterday, like Lucas Sullivan, for example, when he opined it could be a suspension and or time served. That I think they were looking more at maybe getting a better grip on your program. But we'll see if that in fact was the case, because, like I said, I haven't had anything indicate to me that he didn't follow proper protocol, and when it came to the actual domestic abuse allegations. And as I was just on another national radio show a little while ago, I said that's what got this going in the first place was Urban Meyer not understanding what he was being asked about. Actually, he understood what he was being asked about, but the question changed as the day went on that day in Chicago, because he was responding to a story that said Zach Smith had been arrested and charged in 2015, and that was erroneous. That did not happen.
All right, Tim, we got about 30 seconds. You've been around here since leather helmets. You've witnessed other great coaches get fired. Ohio State has never held back. If a coach is wrong, they fired him. So your gut, what happens?
I don't think Urban Meyer gets fired, if that's what you're asking me, but I really don't know past that what they're going to do. I mean, I don't see anything here that says Urban Meyer will be fired. So if that's what it means, but I've been reluctant to make any other call on this because, like I said, I don't know finally what the Board of Trustees and Michael Drake will zero in on on whether or not they're satisfied that, of what they've heard, read, and how things may change in the future. You understand what I'm saying? I mean,
yes.
We don't really, none of us know that at this moment.
Right. Exactly. Well, Tim, I know it's going to continue to keep you busy, but hopefully pretty soon you're writing about Dwayne Haskins instead of, Zach Smith and Courtney Smith and things like that. But
oh man, you think it'll happen? You think that'll happen? That's the funny thing.
Eventually,
these guys are practicing. There's a season opener in 11 days or whatever it is, 10 days, and it's amazing what we're talking about.
It is. Hey, Tim, thanks so much for the time. We really appreciate it.
Sure, anytime. You know that, fellas.